Hi guys, and welcome back to another video on the Hunts and Bucks channel. Today we're going to be discussing the corruption in football, as many would call it. Thomas, what are your thoughts on the two topics we're going to be talking about today?
Well, first there's Man City, which is a shambles in itself. Everyone's seen clear as day the sports washing and fake sponsorship deals that they've done over the last sort of 15 years since the new ownership sort of came into play. It's a disgrace to football, but I have to caveat it with, let's be honest, all the major corporations, e.g., Man United, Juventus, have been found guilty multiple times of similar sort of ways of money laundering. Barcelona, another one that comes to mind. They're all sort of putting the books in negative ways or positive ways to spin it to then pump up the numbers to get past FFP. And while we will be criticising City today, we'll be saying a lot about Man City. It's important, I think, to be fair with the discussion that it's not just Man City that will be guilty of this. There are the likes of Juventus that have been caught for it before. And then secondly, there is obviously this stupid, diabolical Super League that is rearing its ugly head again because of three clubs: Juventus, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. Now, about a month ago, Juventus had about 7 people getting banned from football.
Yeah.
For like 2 years or whatever due to their corruption throughout their club. They've been relegated from Serie A before because of match fixing. They're just a dirty, dirty club at this point. Real Madrid, I always think of as a classic club overall, but it's a monopoly of Florentino Perez and his dirty money laundering tactics that is trying to keep himself richer with this stupid, idiotic Super League. He doesn't like to take no for an answer. He's got beat once. I'm sure this Super League will get beat again, but it will continue to progress until eventually it seems inevitable at this point. In terms of the Barcelona, they're the same as Real Madrid. Let's not kid themselves. Just because they've had Messi and they like to portray themselves in a classier club sort of mentality, they're not. They're really not. They've been dodgy in the way they've done dealings for years. They seem to be the three architects. I have no doubt that the Premier League clubs are part of the 50 that they've sort of talked to in a little propaganda speech. I have no doubt that owners of the big clubs want this to happen because it means that it protects their value. Should it happen? Absolutely not. And yeah, that's sort of my initial take on it. What about you?
Yeah, the problem with as the three clubs you mentioned there, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Juve, obviously they're massive clubs, but there's one thing in common. None of them have really got any money at the moment. Spanish football has been lacking a lot of money, especially since COVID times, and it's been lacking a lot of money for the past few years. And then Juventus, obviously, with their massive deduction in the league, they'll be they'll be as eager as anyone to have a way out of that and what they're currently in with all the big players
Well,
potentially leaving them.
the
So
thing
it's
is,
quite
it
difficult.
comes in. Obviously, it's all about marketability, but it comes in sort of ups and downs. In the 80s and 90s, Italy was the place to be. Then you had like the early 2000s to 2010s, Spain was the place to be. Now, then obviously it came over to the Premier League. Like if you look at 2010, even 2012, you'd go to Real Madrid over any Premier League team because they had that allure. Even United, you go to Real Madrid, that'd be the team you go to. And there was a point when Messi, Ronaldo, etc., was at Barca and also Real Madrid, that league was the most watched league in the world. And I think that was like 2012, 2014, that sort of range. Now, the fact that they haven't been able to sort of capitalize on that product, they can only blame themselves because, like, the Real Madrid chairman Perez was still in that position back then. He's been in the charge as the president of Real Madrid for years. Like, so it's their own fault, really, that they let the Premier League overtake as a monopoly. You got to remember, all the good things about the Premier League, they weren't initially there. Like obviously in the early 2000s to late 2000s, it was Arsene Wenger, Alex Ferguson. But there was a spell before 2008, where England as a whole hadn't really done well in Europe at all for a good sustained period of time. Now, the issue comes with obviously then Abramovich came in. Chelsea had their Champions League final and win. Obviously, Arsenal got to the final in 2006, but that went poorly at Barca. But my point is, Barca and Real and La Liga had that monopoly at one point, and they lost it. And where the Premier League's different is they got the monopoly, and it just went from strength to strength to strength. But it went from strength to strength to strength because of the interest in it, and the history of it, and the tribalism. People want to see the big derbies in the Premier League now. You talk about the North London derby, you talk about the Manchester derby, and they just want to see. If you look at the viewing figures for, say, a Leeds versus Leicester, they're still pretty insane. It's staggering because they want to see the Premier League, and the Premier League with their rebrand in like 1996, I think it was. They've just gone from strength to strength, and they've known what they're doing. They've played TV rights off against each other instead of doing multiple deals where they sell the soul for like sustained periods and just capitalize, getting more money in, more money in, more money in. They've done it sensibly. So there's corruption within the Premier League, which is actually, everyone says the Premier League like it's its own entity. The Premier League is the clubs. It's as simple as that. You have the board of the Premier League, obviously, you look at directions and marketing. But the Premier League clubs, there is corruption within that, which links into the City thing. But they have done superbly well at advertising the league as a whole, which has led to the likes of Perez becoming jealous, wanting the money so they can monopolise themselves. Because let's be honest, he's only there to make money. He doesn't care about the world game. He claims that kids aren't interested. I'm not being funny. You go to a game now, you see thousands of children at like Premier League games in England, at least. So I don't know. But my thoughts on it are that nothing should change. The Super League should go. It's his own fault anyway. He should stop whinging like a little brat and get out of the position that he's in, to be honest.
Yeah. Right, moving on to the Man City thing then. We'll go through some of the potential punishments for what we've been at this moment and what we've been alleged to have done. But so out of the punishments, I've seen a list of them.
Hang on. Before we go into the punishments and before we even delve into City, as a City fan, how do you feel about this?
I feel like it's been something. I obviously feel I'm gutted, obviously, but I think it's something that's been waiting to happen for a few years now. Because after the first initial thing that we had with UEFA, where we might have been banned from the Champions League for 2 years, I think there was always going to be a follow-up. And there's been murmurs of it over the past couple of years, maybe, City have been in an investigation. Because this investigation, that this statement that's been made has been come off the back of is a 4-year investigation. So obviously it's been in the works for a while now.
The issue is,
to be honest,
from an outsider, I know we can't say they're guilty because it's an ongoing thing. It's going to take 2 or 3 years for it to go through and be finalised, whatever, with appeals and all that jazz. But the fact that the Premier League have openly stated that City have been obstructive with the viewings of the finances and not helped the investigation doesn't provide a good look. Because if you were not guilty, you'd be like, here's all our finances, here's our books, go and jog on, have a look. Like, do you get what I mean?
But what I will say though about that is that after the Premier League have stated that, even if they've made something, they put stuff, even if City give them all of their books, which they wouldn't want to do anyway, because you're putting yourself open to everything that could be thrown at you, which, as you said, lots of other clubs are probably guilty of as well, but haven't been found out for. Even if they don't find what they want to find, they'll find something and then be able to use it against them within that case. So I think it is. I get what you're saying. I do agree with you. I think that it seems a little bit suspicious that they're being obstructive with the evidence.
The only issue is
does put them
they've got some sponsorships that are like addressed to like post boxes in London.
Yeah,
and it's like, or they've got some companies that were set up in 2013 and have no other transaction other than giving money to City. So it's one of them. What do you think type of punishment needs to occur, if any?
So I'll go through what I've seen could be the punishments. Whether these punishments are possible or not, I don't know. But I've heard all sorts. So there's a massive fine, which would be I don't see there's been any chance of that happening. As being the sole punishment. There's a points deduction. I don't know how much it would be, but if you go off the Juventus case, which this seems to be quite almost as severe, if not more severe, than Juve, then that'd be 15 points, maybe 20. Then you've got the expulsion from the relegation of Man City, so we'd go into the Championship, which I'm not sure how that would work, but or there's the expulsion from the league as a whole, which I'm assuming would put us right at the bottom of the pyramid, like with clubs that go into administration. And then there's also the removal of titles and I saw something about replaying of matches. I don't think that makes any. How does that make any sense? But the stripping of titles as well. If I'm being honest, I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I think it deserves a big points deduction. From what I've heard so far, I think it deserves a massive points deduction because I think it's from a fan's perspective. It's nothing the fans. I know that what has to be done, but to relegate them from the whole division completely, again, I'm speaking from a position of not much knowledge of this, but I think a points deduction would make sense because City would have a really hard time at least getting into the top four with that. Ironically, it would still put us above Liverpool and Chelsea, but we'd struggle a lot with that. And whether that would be this season, I'm not sure. When it's going to take a long time for this to happen.
It won't be this season. It'll be in like 2 years' time.
But I think a realistic one would be a points deduction. But based on the fact that City have been obstructive with, like you say, been obstructive with the evidence, it's been a 4-year investigation, and alleged to be over 9 seasons. I think a relegation wouldn't be surprising. I think a relegation wouldn't be surprising at all.
A relegation wouldn't be surprising, but I don't think it's the right thing to do, per se. I also don't think stripping the titles with like asterisks next to it is the right thing. It sort of gets rid of the whole aspect of competition. And there are people in that institution, e.g. the players, who won't have had anything to do with it, really. I think what needs to be done is something. We need unforeseen points deduction, like 30 points, maybe 50 points, something mental. Because even 50 points for Man City, they'll stay up. They won't get anywhere, but they'll stay up.
Yeah.
So it's been like mad like that, like 50 points. And then after that, they need to go hard with a fine. I think as much as it'll never happen because they've got bags of money, I mean, like, you need to go for like £400 million fines. Like, stick that on the club. Say, this comes out of your revenue and your incomes, so you can't really sign anyone for 2 seasons. Yeah. And also give a hefty transfer ban.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
So they've messed up their FFP by disciplining them with a fine. They've made it so they can't sign anyone with a transfer ban for 2 years because the fine will be a slap on the wrist to the Saudis. So they're not going to care. It's not like enough money to make them sleep, right? But it's just a slap on the wrist. You give them a transfer ban, complete transfer ban, not like the shoddy Chelsea one where they got away with it with Kovacic loan with option to buy and all that crap. It needs to be a proper transfer ban. You can't bring anyone in. And then a hefty, like 40, 30 point deduction. But if you go that hard on City, when inevitably you look at Chelsea's transfers this last year, and they obviously don't meet FFP, like it's kind of obvious they're not going to. And there's some shady 8-year contracts going around. You have to go equally as hard with Chelsea.
Yeah.
Then you need to go equally as hard with anyone. Obviously, the points deductions, I think, need to be contexted. So if it was, say, Brentford doing it, you wouldn't give them a 40-point deduction that you gave to City because they just wouldn't survive that, if that makes sense. So I think it has to be contexted with a average point tally of the club. They need to struggle the same amount, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
City can't be getting like what I'm saying. It needs to be hard for them to stay up, but it shouldn't be a point where they've got no chance and they've got nothing to play for. The
yeah,
same with Brentford.
I agree. I think you may as well just relegate them if they're gonna have no chance.
Yeah,
But I don't agree with the fact that they might be just because they're not as good potentially on the field means that off the field, even if they've committed the same crime, they get
yeah, but it's not going to be to the same. Let's be honest. If a lower team does it, so say, I mean, the
yeah,
only one that relatively could do it to the same extent that's a lower team is Everton, with their finances being so bad for the last 20 years. But if we say Aston Villa, who have spent a lot in the last sort of 3-4 years, right? Theirs isn't going to add to the amount that City have done over the 9-10 years. So you can then say caveat that with, oh, they haven't done as much. So the relegation point total last season was this. They got this. We'll give them, say it's 23 points different. We'll give them a 20 point deduction. So they would survive by 2 points. Then they've got to fight because then it's their like level, if that makes sense. Whereas with
yeah.
City, if they're 2 points, like anyway, I'm chatting out the backside.
I don't think they really take that into consideration when they do it. I think they just go, right, what's a massive thing that's going to be relative to other cases in the past? Like, I think they will take the Juventus one into consideration if it is a points deduction they go with. Because,
Yeah.
I don't know
They got
fully what
relegated,
happened.
didn't they? Originally, I think they were relegated to Series C for the match fixing Calciopoli scandal.
Yes, initially they were, yeah. That was, I can't remember what that was was it 2000s that was?
Yeah, because Buffon stayed with them. I
Yeah.
think.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
I think they'd take into consideration Juve's one. I don't think it'd be 40 or 50, like you say. They'd just relegate us if they were going to do that. Because while you say it's possible, I don't think it is. If you think City this season, when we're playing a bit average, we're not playing at our best, we're probably looking at about no more than 85 points, I think, maybe 90.
right,
If you
right. But
take
you only need
40, if you take 40 off that, you're talking 50 points. And that is when this is
saying
us
that with
now.
50s.
I know you can say it with 50s, but this is with a team that knows they're getting a points deduction and there'll have been a load of outgoings initially before this.
Yeah.
Because this will probably happen in the summer going into a new season. So I just don't see them doing that because we'd just be straight down.
So where's the state of football now then? How how corrupt is it? Do you think?
It's awful. It has just become a way for rich people to put their money into it and exploit it to make themselves richer rather than it being on the focus of what it should be, which is people wanting to get involved in the sport because they're interested in it and they want to increase the club's chance of doing well because that's why they're in the business for it, rather than being chairman just not to spend any money so they can increase their own profits.
Weirdly, right? Weirdly, with City, I don't feel sorry for them at all because it's obviously wrong what they've done.
Yeah.
They've cut books and whatever. But the one thing I can't put against the chairman is that him trying to like double his assets or anything. Because since he's come into City, all he's wanted to do is make them win and
Yeah.
revolutionise the whole club. So obviously, I'm ending the videos kind of on a more positive note about the club and the chairman, which it shouldn't be, because what he's done is disgraceful.
Yeah.
But at least when he's been doing it, he's not there looking at his assets. Whereas Todd Bowley's come in and thought, oh, in 2 years I can get 2 billion for this. I'm just going to spend this shit ton now. Then I can, 2 billion extra for this. Then we can go into the Super League and triple my asset or something. That's what Todd Bowley's coming. Whereas City's owners have come in, helped the city massively, revolutionised the club, brought in top of the range youth sort of infrastructure, spent absolutely bucket tons, cooked the books, done it the wrong way, granted. But everything he's done, I suppose, he's trying to win.
Yeah.
It's just it's sports washing and corruption in the way he's done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's better than some owners, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. People. Some fans would still take this over the current state of their current state with their chairman who doesn't spend anything as it is anyway. But
yeah, I mean, the one that annoys me most is United fans. I'm not going to get into it now, but they're like, oh, we don't spend money. You spend as much as Man City. Like, shut your faces. Yeah. Like, the amount of corruption there is mental. Anyway, moving on. Right. I've enjoyed today's video. Let us know what your thoughts on the corruption within the English game and the Super League sort of entails in your opinion. And please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.